Welcome into another episode of the Fat Guy Podcast. I'm the Fat Guy. Most people just call me Brett. Thanks for checking out another episode. On today's episode, we will be talking about my first month, January 2020, as I attempt to lose 150 pounds in the year 2020. So we'll have an update on January, and we'll tell you about what we're doing in February. We'll talk some intermittent fasting talk. And some interesting experiences I've had as well recently. Interesting to me. Before we get into that, please just take a moment to consider doing me a huge favor. So there's a couple ways you can help me. One is if you can review the podcast on Apple Podcasts. So if you're an iOS user, that's easy. You're probably listening in the iOS podcasting app. Just click on the episode page and go to leave a review. A 5-star review and a quick comment about something you find beneficial about the show would help us immensely in spreading the word. So thank you so much for that. I appreciate your patience through ads. We do have ads. I'm just trying to, not even really cover the cost of my time, just podcasting hosting. If I just get to the point that we cover podcasting hosting, that would be huge for me. And so those ads help with that. They don't cover it. If you hate the ads, and you want to go above and beyond and say, man, I love your podcast. I want to be a patron. Here's a few cool things about that. It's just a few bucks. Then you get your own podcasting feed that you can plug into your app, or you can just go to the Patreon website and listen to the new episodes of the podcast. And they have no ads and they have no fluff. They have none of the stuff that you're listening to now. None of this stuff is in it. You'll skip over all this. You'll skip over all the ads. You jump right into the meat and potatoes of the podcast. So saves you a lot of time. You don't have to listen to ads or fluff or me begging you for things. I'm not begging, but me requesting that you consider things like this. So not only that, you get patron-only podcasts that only patrons hear. We try to do that on a semi-regular basis. And you get content that only patrons get that I don't do for anybody else. And lastly, you go to the front of the line if you need questions, because I always get asked questions. I always get messages on my social media accounts. And I answer them as I can. Sometimes it can be overwhelming. Patrons go to the front of the line. They don't have to wait. And so I can help you in that regard as well. So if you want to just consider that, go to losewithmason.com, losewithmason.com, and you'll see all the information there about becoming a patron and what it means and all that kind of stuff. So here we go with this week's episode of the podcast, and a big thank you to our patrons who, it's a big deal to decide to give somebody a few bucks a month in appreciation for what they do, and it means the world to me. We actually have a new patron, Angie Richardson. Thank you so much for being on board. Hello to Hannah DeMello, Eric Barnhart, Cindy Carr, Bessie Williams, Kenneth Wilkerson, and Bobby Houston. You guys are just amazing, and it means more to me than you possibly know. A quick reminder, if you're not subscribed on the social media sites, Fat Guy Podcast is the username. So that's on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter as well. And that's the easiest way to message me if you need help. If you're a patron, you can just message me on the Patreon website. That works, or the social media websites. Either way. If you do message me on social media and you're a patron, please make sure to mention that you're a patron, in case I don't recognize your name when I immediately see it. That would be awesome, because I want to make sure you get the treatment that you deserve. So, ending January of 2020, first month of the year, I hit the goal. My goal was to lose between 12 and 15 pounds, because that's what I need to do every single month to lose 150 pounds this year, and that's my goal. So I barely hit the mark, but I hit it, and of course I'm happy with it. Anytime you hit a goal, you got to be happy. But I really knew I needed to be ahead of the goal, because here's what happens. The more weight you lose, the harder it is to lose weight. And we'll talk about that just for a second, because I just had somebody ask me about that. It's actually a good friend of mine. She's been kicking butt. She does intermittent fasting. She hikes. She does the biking. She does weights. She's very committed to getting the health and the body that she wants to be and where she wants in life. She's very committed. And she's like 20 pounds away. And it's become very slow for her. And we had a very brief conversation about it. But here's what happens, especially if you're very, very much overweight. If you're 50 or 100 or 150 pounds overweight, or more, your body burns an enormous amount of calories just to keep the enormity that is you alive. Okay? It just takes a lot of calories. So if you're laying in the bed watching Netflix and you do that all day, you burn an insane amount of calories if you're very large. Now, the more weight you lose, the less large you are, the less calories you burn when you're just laying in bed watching Netflix, because your body doesn't consume that many calories to exist. And the closer you get to your goal weight, the less calories your body just burns existing. And so there's only so much food you can cut, or so long you can fast, or so much exercise you can do. And so those huge leaps and losses become less and less as time goes on. I can't stress this enough. Don't let that frustrate you. Just understand it's part of the process, and that if you stick with the process, even though it goes slower, you will eventually get to a place that makes you happy, okay? Millions, hundreds of thousands of people have done it. As hard as it is to lose weight, hundreds and hundreds of people do hit their goals every year. It happens. Consistency is the key. And that's the other thing me and my friend were talking about, was its consistency. Pretty much no matter what you decide to do, if it is something that works in the realm of losing weight, it will work if you're consistent. It will. The hardest thing to do is to be consistent. It's not hard to do something extreme for a week or two. It's really not hard to even do something extreme for a month. But you know what's hard? Is to be consistent month after month after month after month after month after month. It's just hard to be consistent. And that should be your focus. Now, if you've been following the Losing the 150 Pounds This Year series as we started it, obviously you know that I have chosen to be in a state of ketosis semi-regularly and do that mainly via intermittent fasting. So you can eat a ketogenic diet and you can eat 2 meals a day. You can probably even eat 3 meals a day, and you'll be in ketosis a lot if your carbs are really low, 20 grams or lower. But you can also enter ketosis just by skipping meals and doing intermittent or extending fasting. Once your body burns off those glycogen stores and the glucose in the liver, etc., you enter into a state of ketosis. And you can do that while eating carbs. Obviously, you don't want to pig out on carbs, but you can have some carbs. So it allows you to have a little bit more, more of a standard diet. You definitely don't want a standard diet, because the American standard diet is horrible. But it allows you to have more of a standard diet and still explore the benefits of ketosis. So in January, I started out the first 7 or 8 days, I did 36s to 42s, which is called alternate day fasting. So basically, from 6 or 7 at night when I ate my last meal, I wouldn't eat anything all that night. I wouldn't eat anything all the next day. And then the next morning at around 10 or something, I'd have brunch or breakfast or lunch or whatever that would be considered. And it would be somewhere between 36 and 42 hours. And it was a great jump start. Had amazing weight loss results that first week. And from that week on, I decided to mix it up a little bit. And I did a lot of 24s. And I did a couple of 36s. But I really fell into this 24 thing because I continued to lose weight. I'm like, you know what? If I can eat every 24 hours and lose weight, I'm just going to stick with that, and we'll see how effective it is. So the weight loss slowed, but it's still consistent. And at the end of the month, pretty much with 3 weeks of basically 24-hour fasting, and that first week of 36 to 42-hour fasting, we'd wound up losing, it was somewhere between 12 and 13 pounds. So we're kind of on track to hit our 150 pounds. But as I considered those results and what we did going into February, I decided I just have to be more extreme in February. I need to get ahead of my goal, because I know if I'm consistent, and I hope I can be consistent, when June, July, August, September, the further we get into the year, the slower the weight loss will be. It will be very hard to hit that 12-pound a month goal. And so I need to jumpstart and get some extra gains all that I can, especially early on when you're the largest and the weight comes off the easiest. So I decided what I'm going to attempt to do for the month of February, which is a shorter month, by the way, and I think that's important. Although I'm still going to try to do it for 4 weeks. The month is actually shorter. Is I'm going to try to do basically fast 4 days, eat for 3. Now, actually, if I can pull it off the way I intend, it'll actually be 4.5 days and eating for 2.5 days. So, be 4 days, 12 hours, and then I'll eat for 2 days, 12 hours. And that will allow me to eat on the weekends when I'm mainly doing, basically I just play poker on the weekends, but I also visit friends and family, and it allows you to share a meal if you're with them, and it allows me to eat because there's not the healthiest choices in the poker room. I can eat keto or low carb there, but it's very expensive. They charge you an insane amount of money to bring you hamburger patties without the bun and the fries, which I don't understand. They usually have a steak dinner there, but you don't get any reduction on the meal. They keep the mashed potatoes or the baked potato or the whatever the carby stuff is. You can tell them to keep it, and they're still going to charge you for all of that and just bring you a piece of steak. So it's very expensive. So it can be done. But I try to do this way. I can have a more happy medium. That way I can have a few more carbs and eat more regular and maybe not be quite so expensive. And then, of course, I bring things with me. I try to bring good grass-fed jerky, no-carb jerky, and, some other low-carby things to help me get through the weekend when I go. But nevertheless, that is the thing I think will work best for me and yield the greatest results. So as I'm recording this podcast right now, I don't know what hour I'm on. Allow me to open up my fasting app and tell you what hour I'm on this week. Just a second. 28 hours and 42 minutes is where I'm at. So a little over a day, 4 hours over one day. And I feel okay. I had a bad hunger thing in the middle of the day today that lasted about 2 hours. But we powered through it. And then, of course, I have my partner in crime, my best friend, the person that I've talked to a lot recently on the podcast, because I think it's important that you have a partner or a motivator or somebody to help you. And so I'm hoping they're going to be able to help me get through this. I love fasting. The third and fourth day are the best. If you can make it to the third and fourth day, you feel amazing. Your body's running purely on ketones. Your ketone levels are high. You have that sense of euphoria. You have a high level of energy. You're not having the hunger pains anymore. You don't feel like you need to eat, and it really is a sweet spot. So in some sense, it's kind of frustrating to do 4-day fast, because just when you hit the great part of it, then you eat and ruin it. And I know that's a weird thing, and if you haven't ever experienced it, it's impossible to explain it where you can understand it, but just trust me, that is true, and that's how it works. Nevertheless, I look forward to this. Now, look, I reserve the right to change this plan at any time this month. If I decide at this end of this week that, I don't think that works for me, and I want to go back to maybe doing 48s or a mixture of 36s and 48s or whatever I decide, well, it won't be a failure or anything like that. It'll just be a change in strategy. And that's what I'm going to end this podcast on. I basically wanted this to be an update on January. Then I wanted to reveal my plans for February as we go forward. But what I'm going to end the podcast with is something I've talked about previously, but I want to impress upon you today why I think time-restricted eating and intermittent fasting is one of the best tools in your weight loss and health toolbox, is because it's so flexible. You can do 16-8, you can do 18-6, you can do 20-4, you can do 23-1, you can do 36s, which is basically alternate day. You can do 48s, you can do 72s, you can do 96s, and you can do any mixture and combination thereof. So, say you know that you're going to have something happening this Thursday, and then Saturday and Sunday is going to be big, and you're just going to be family or meals or things like that. Maybe you do 48s for Monday and Tuesday, and then you get that Wednesday, so you eat, and then maybe you do Thursday, Friday, you do that 36, the alternate day. So then when you get into Friday evening, you can do the thing with the friends or the family and do Saturday. And then Sunday, you jump back into something else. Maybe you said, I can do a 72 here, or maybe I can just do a 24 here. Or, maybe I've got a business lunch today and then a dinner with my best friend, so I'm just going to do a 16-8 today. You can constantly change it and adapt it so that you're always getting some benefit from it, but you're changing it up and mixing it up to meet your life and meet your goals. So it's where your life and your goals combine. You find a sweet spot of mixing up how long you fast. And again, I want to address this issue about the starvation. Look, when you're fasting, you're not starving. When you're fasting and your body depletes itself of the glucose and glycogen stores, and that insulin level falls, it switches on to drawing up fat stores and eating it. So the anecdote that I mentioned at the beginning of the podcast that I wanted to talk about happened this past weekend at a poker table. And this woman who's a realtor, who actually helped me find my realtor, helped me sell some property I had a couple years ago. She just happened to mention that she was doing 16-8 alternate day fasting. A discussion just started, and the next thing you know, everybody at the table's involved in it, wanting to know more. And she's telling her experiences, and I'm telling mine, and we're telling them together. And people and there's just, their mind is blown. And we start talking about, people that are losing weight by doing nothing but 16-8, and maybe they're doing maybe a little extra, like they're cutting the sodas out, so you're not just drinking liquid sugar, but basically eating just basically a simple diet, a simple, relatively healthy diet, not going crazy, and just doing 16-8s, and they're losing weight. And then, I would say that those people probably have the very, very lowest level of insulin resistance. They're probably reasonably insulin sensitive, so they don't have to fast that much. But then you get me, a person that's, I'm borderline diabetic, type 2 diabetic. Like I think on some days I could be diagnosed type 2 because, I wear a constant glucose monitor thing on my arm. And so I see what my blood sugar levels all throughout the day, and they can stay high after I eat. And so it's very borderline. So, I'm on the worst end of the scale. And so 16-8, I can't lose weight 16-8. Now, I can kind of maintain if I eat the right things during my 8 hours, but I can't lose. But apparently I can lose some on 24s because I did that a lot during January and I lost weight. I think the most effective for people who really need to lose weight, like you need to lose more than 30 or 40 or 50 pounds, is you really need to be doing at least 36s a lot. That's alternate day. Because it just takes so long, because we're so insulin resistant. It takes so long for our insulin to hit that basement level so that the floodgates open and our body easily accesses that fat and burn it. But the point I was making is you're not starving. People who are starving are people who calorie restrict. These people are trying to eat 800 or 1,000 calories a day. They're eating just enough that their insulin level never drops so that they easily access that fat stores. They never enter ketosis because they're eating just enough and just often enough. So it keeps them in that starvation kind of state. But when you fast and the insulin levels hit rock bottom, the floodgates open with the fat stores, and your body eats as much fat as it needs. It eats all the calories it wants. It has a smorgasbord of calories, and if it needs 2,000, it eats them. If it needs 2,500, it eats them. If it needs 1,500, it eats them. Whatever amount your body needs to eat, it eats it, but it's eating it from your fat stores, which is why you lose so much weight when you're fasting. And when you're doing calorie restriction, and I'm not saying you can't lose weight calorie restricting, because you can, and a lot of people do. But I will say that it's a much tougher row to hoe, as my grandma would have said, and mom would have said. And, if you don't understand what hoeing a tough row is, then you're not as country as I am. But you can lose weight calorie restricting, but there's a lot of negative and hard things that come along with them, and one of those is this quote-unquote starvation mode. The main thing that happens when you just do calorie restriction, especially if you do extreme calorie restriction, is that your metabolism slows way down, which means the farther you go, really, really the harder it is. And you get even hungrier, and you want even more food, and the cravings are even more intense. Whereas when you're fasting, when you do a 2-day fast or a 3-day fast, your metabolism actually increases. So you don't get that lowered metabolism so that it offsets too much. You actually get a spike in metabolism. Now, if you just keep fasting for days and days and days, yes, your metabolism will come down, but it's still a much more dramatic positive result because you're consuming no calories externally. So even if your metabolism falls 20%, you're still burning all those calories from food that's on you. So you still get the dramatic weight loss. So it's still a much better way to go, even if you fast long enough that you do see a metabolism drop. But if you're doing 24s, 36s, 48s, or 72s, you're actually getting an increase in metabolism, and you'll know it. You'll recognize it. You'll feel it, because it'll get hard to sleep at night. Around that third day or so usually is where you find yourself just not being able to sleep that night, because you're so full of energy and your metabolism is so amped up that you just don't need sleep. And everybody I've ever talked with or helped, they always ask, they'll be like, God, why can't I sleep? It's like day 3 and I'm trying to make it 3 days. I couldn't sleep last night. And I'm like, yeah, you got a lot of energy. Metabolism is kicked up a notch. So that's my anecdotal story to go with this version of this week's episode. I hope that things I say help you in some way. I understand this episode wasn't really strategy or specifics too much about helping you, but I think in generalities, if it'll help motivate and inspire you, hopefully. Maybe give you some broader sense of knowledge, especially in regards to starvation mode and metabolism and calorie restriction. And then, of course, update you on my results. And most people that tell me I helped them, it's crazy, because I've helped a lot of people. I've coached a lot of people, worked with a lot of people, just answered people's questions. But still, surprisingly, I would say just as many people will occasionally message me or comment on a post I make and say that I helped them by doing nothing but just being an inspiration. They just saw that I accomplished weight loss and that it inspired them to try to attempt something. So, look, you never know how you're helping somebody. And you can help me by leaving us a review on Apple Podcasts. Boy, that would mean the world to me. A 5-star review would be amazing. Leave a few words about how we've helped you. And let Apple know to share this podcast with people when they search for weight loss or intermittent fasting or keto or extended fasting, that they find this podcast and get good, solid scientific information that that I strive to provide here. I try to stay away from opinion. I try to research everything I talk about and know that it's factual and well researched. I'm not a doctor. You need to see a doctor if you're going to do something like this, okay? I didn't give you any specific weight loss advice. I didn't tell you to fast. I'm sharing my story, my experiences, and my opinions, and that's it. You shouldn't construe anything I say in this as advice specifically for you, because it isn't. All right, I appreciate you so much. Thanks again so much to the patrons. I appreciate your support. And we're going to kill February. February is the month of love, right? The month of love. You got Valentine's and all this stuff. It's the shortest month of the year. We're going to kill it. We're going to destroy it. We're going to burn some calories. We're going to drop some pounds, and it's going to be epic. And thanks for joining me for the ride.